Good afternoon. Welcome to Lehigh's College of Business and the annual Gruhn Distinguished Finance Speaker Series. I'm Nathan Urban, Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. On behalf of President Joe Helbley and Lehigh Business, it's my pleasure to welcome trustees, faculty, staff, students, and members of the community. And a special welcome to our speaker, Sanjay Shah, who graduated from Lehigh in 1989 with his MBA. The college is pleased to bring nationally and internationally recognized thought leaders, such as Mr. Shah, to our campus to address important business topics of the day and to share their stories. We pride ourselves here at Lehigh on preparing students for success, and part of that preparation is having students engage with successful industry leaders, leaders who, through their hard work, insight, and innovative mindset, reshape companies and industries. We want students to hear about the successes of these thought leaders and to gain from their insights into important topics of the day. I'd also like to thank Don and Judy Gruhn, who have made this event possible through their generosity. Unfortunately, the Gruhns couldn't be with us today, but they are watching via live stream. The Gruhn Speaker Series, established in 2008, is just one example of ways in which we extend the educational experience of Lehigh students beyond the classroom. Events like these are critical elements in the life of the university, bringing us together as a community to engage with ideas, experts, and each other. Distinguished alumni such as Don Gruhn from Lehigh's class of 1949 find many different avenues to give back to their alma mater. Don's generosity is felt across campus, from endowing a scholarship fund, contributing to the Financial Services Laboratory and the Martindale Society, to supporting the Zollner Art Center, where we sit here today, and the journalism and athletic departments. He is a true friend of Lehigh. The Gruhn Speaker Series is just one other way in which Don supports Lehigh, and we're grateful for this opportunity to welcome another thought leader to campus. Today we have a wonderful program for you. We have Sanjay Shah, the founder, Chief Executive Officer, and Chief Architect of Vistex, Inc., a technology company that helps businesses take control of their mission-critical processes. Founded in 1999, Vistex, a portmanteau of vision and execution, works with world-class companies as customers, companies such as Sony, GM, Coca-Cola, and Bayer. Sanjay received a Bachelor of Commerce from Sydenham College in Mumbai, India. In 1988, before earning a Master's of Business Administration at Lehigh in 1989. He worked as an accountant at PricewaterhouseCoopers, for General Motors in operations and logistics in Canada, and for the software giant SAP in Germany. Sanjay left SAP to create software that would help businesses take their products and services to the marketplace. Sanjay formed Vistex as an independent provider and collaborator with SAP, offering embedded solution extensions for SAP software, among other services. Based in Hoffman Estates, Illinois, Vistex employs more than 1,700 workers in 21 offices across the US and the world. Sanjay founded and is president of the Vistex Foundation, which provides aid around the world, including programs for inner-city children, the construction of a birthing center in Sierra Leone, and the foundation recently built a large hospital in rural India. In 2017, Sanjay committed a $5 million gift to elevate executive education in Lehigh's Business College and named the Vistex Institute for Executive Learning and Research. The Vistex Institute provides high-impact, short-duration programs for working professionals with a focus on content that enhances personal and corporate effectiveness. He's been awarded the prestigious EY Entrepreneur of the Year Midwest Award in 2019 in the technology category. He currently serves on Lehigh's College of Business Dean's Advisory Council. In 2021, he received Lehigh's Distinguished Alumni Award for Excellence in Entrepreneurship. On a personal note, I've gotten to know Sanjay a bit over the last 2 years, and I've found him to be deeply interested in the success of Lehigh and its students, and to be very generous in his willingness to share his insight and time discussing important questions that face Lehigh business or the university. Whether it's in discussions about the connection between business and technology generally, or about how data will impact the healthcare industry, Sanjay's perspective has been invaluable. Our discussion with Sanjay today will be moderated by the Kevin L. and Lisa A. Clayton, Dean of the College of Business, Georgette Chapman Phillips. So please give a warm welcome to Sanjay Shah and Dean Phillips.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon to everybody. So good to see all of you here today, and thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. I hope that this is a discussion and that you're getting ready and writing down all of your questions. There will be a Q&A after this conversation between me and Sanjay. So Sanjay, you got your MBA from Lehigh in 1989 at the age of 21. Mm-hmm. What made a student from Mumbai, India, travel all the way to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania?
One person, Lee Iacocca.
No. Lee Iacocca.
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
I grew up in what I call a fairly closeted bliss in Mumbai, and as I was pursuing my undergraduate degree in India in the mid-'80s, Lee Iacocca was all the rage. He was the business icon who single-handedly revived Chrysler. And so it was a bit of a fanboy moment for me. And I went home one day wondering where he got his education from. And the rest followed.
Well, we're glad that you did. But you were an accountant at that point, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I still am.
But I read somewhere that you, after you graduated, you only were an accountant for another 6 months.
That's right. That's right. Accounting, especially when you get out and pursue it in the professional world as a career, can be, at least back then, can be a bit of a slow burn. I guess I wanted to run faster, and I figured, wouldn't it be cool to actually do the work than just to audit somebody's work? And so that got the better of me. Impatience got the better of me, and I decided to pursue a career in operations.
Well, tell us about Vistex. What made you start the company? What was your impetus to going out on this entrepreneurial venture?
The genesis of Vistex, and actually, the word Vistex, I owe that to a professor here at Lehigh, believe it or not. He was our professor of international finance, and in one of his lectures he had said, vision without execution is just daydreaming, and execution without a vision is just hard work, and you need both. And so I figured, why don't I incorporate that into the name of my company? And that's how Vistex came about, as vision to execution. So,
could you tell us about the company?
And the company, of course. So I spent a few years with SAP, who is the most dominant provider of what's called enterprise software that essentially manages all of a company's functions. And I figured, especially I was in R&D, in research and development at their headquarters in Germany, and I felt that there were some areas that the platform could do better, and had a proposal for SAP to make it do better, and that was not a priority for them at that time. And I just felt so compelled that the time was right and the need was now. And so I branched out on my own.
After first learning German.
I'm sorry?
When did you learn German?
German. So when I actually moved in the mid-'90s, I would say, to actually work for SAP in Germany, back then, all of their R&D functions were done in German. So if you wanted to work and survive there, you had to learn German. So it was more of a survival instinct for me, and so had to learn it, not just learn it, but actually also employ it in the workplace in a matter of 3 months.
Wow. From nothing to 3 months.
Correct. There was a lot of accelerated learning. Remember, I always wanted to run fast. So here was my another opportunity to run fast.
When you started at Vistex, I understand that you did not take capital from outside sources. I guess we would call that bootstrapping. Why was that important to you?
It was important because I come from a family of accountants and traders where I was taught very early on the importance of equity and the importance of ownership. So I always had that at the back of my mind, that I wanted to own as much of Vistex as possible, because typically, most entrepreneurs, as soon as they have an idea, the first thing they do is to figure out how are they going to raise funds for it, how to fund the idea. Well, I went about it a little differently. I thought I had the skill sets that were required to write the code, to be able to sell it, and also to be able to deploy it. So I don't know, call it ebullience or exuberance or insanity. I thought I could do it all, and and preserve my ownership in the process, and that's what led to it. So for about a year or so, I was just by myself, trying to do everything.
So take me back to that. Did you work at SAP while you were starting Vistex? Did you completely leave SAP to start? What was
No, I completely left SAP,
Okay.
but I was also a fairly marketable consultant, an SAP consultant.
Oh, okay.
And so I was able to, garner some work while I worked on my idea. So, I did some consulting work, let's just say,
Right.
while I was developing and seeding the Vistex idea.
Did you have a family at this time?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell us your wife's reaction to this?
Yes, she was, I would say perplexed and amazed would be an understatement, but she actually went quite ballistic because when I told her that I was leaving SAP, she was 6 months pregnant with our second child.
Okay.
So, but thankfully for me, it worked out.
Thankfully for everybody, it worked out. We are emerging now from the pandemic into what is a new workforce, a hybrid workforce. How are you handling the hybrid activity at Vistex?
It's interesting that everybody's talking about hybrid work, etc., which of course accentuated by COVID. But for tech companies and for us, we've always been somewhat hybrid, even before COVID. A lot of we seek talent where talent resides, and it does not necessarily have to reside where our offices are located. So we've always been somewhat hybrid. It's just that we are talking about it a lot more, right? That being said, I think we always encourage and want more people to come into the office for in-person collaboration, for just networking and bonding and hallway conversations, etc. So while we haven't really enforced anybody to come back on a mandatory basis, while I, for one, believe very, very strongly in in-person collaboration, we've been hybrid, and we're just talking about it a lot more now. Right. And I think there'll be, we will continue to stay hybrid, maybe a little more so than we were in the past.
Right. I would like to shift the conversation now to the theme of the talk, our year of learning theme. The official topic is limitations of technology. When do benefits of technology outweigh the potential harm? And for those of you who may not be in the business college, what we do each year is we take one theme and we wind it through all of our classes. And Sanjay was kind enough to jump onto this theme. And so that is our theme. And so as somebody who is a technologist, we are particularly interested in your views. Mm-hmm. So what how do the benefits of technology outweigh the potential harm?
Yeah, I mean, technology, and we'll stick to the business context of it, because on the personal front, we all know how much technology has benefited us, right? Things that we take for granted. Remember, when was the last time we asked anybody for directions? Or I can't recall the last time I got lost anywhere, or not being able to find something. Well, we had happen all the time, right? So just leaving the personal benefits aside, from a business standpoint, I think technology has been a game changer. And if you look at every major disruption that has happened in the world in the last decade or two, it's all technology-led. Every single disruption has been technology-led. So it does far more good than harm, but it can do harm. And I'm waiting for you to ask me, how?
How?
Because we sometimes tend to over-rely on it. We often fail to recognize its limitations. That just as, too much of a bad thing can be worse, I think too much of a good thing can also be bad. I think it's not a panacea, and sometimes I feel that, folks think technology is the solution to all of your business problems, and it's not. And if applied incorrectly, it can actually cause far more harm. And there are several examples and anecdotes out there.
What technology has disrupted your business the most?
I would say the technology that has disrupted our business the most is cloud computing. It's a true democratization of what we call enterprise software. Enterprise software historically was provided on either mainframe computers or starting the 90s on what's called client server. You still need large servers and so on and so forth. The cloud has essentially made enterprise software accessible to anyone with a browser. Anybody with a browser on any device can access enterprise software. What that means is how you then consume it has to be so easy to use and has to be, there's often an example I like to cite is our customers over the years would tell us, we want it faster, cheaper, better. Whatever you do, we want it faster, cheaper, better. And we would say, pick any two. We can't give you all three. But guess what cloud computing has made us do? They want all three, and they want it now. So I would say cloud computing has been a tectonic shift. And not just how we provide it and how they consume it, but also how they pay for it. Cloud computing means we all pay for it as we go, right? We do not pay for it up front. Enterprise software was always paid for up front. Large, multi-million-dollar outlays up front went from that to pay-as-you-go. So that requires a massive shift in how you adapt, not just from an organization standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint, because I'm waiting for subscription payments to our employees. Right? We'll pay you over 3 years. Because that's what our customers want now.
Well, perhaps you can explain to us a little bit more with the cloud computing. It sounds like it's a real benefit to the customer.
Absolutely.
Because now the customer does not have to have that big investment up front.
Correct.
Is it a benefit or a harm to your company?
I think in the long run, it's a benefit. In the short run, it may appear as a harm, and we are living through it, especially from a financial standpoint, like I mentioned, and also being able to gear up, especially if you are a company that was not born in the cloud, as they say. And there are companies that emerge or are incepted to provide this service in the cloud, and everything they do is geared towards that. Companies like us, we have to do both, so to speak. So I think in the long term, the reason it's a benefit because it tends to be stickier. It's harder for customers to change because now you not only provide the software and say, okay, now run with it, you can run it wherever you want. Now you are running it for them. You have their data as well, and it tends to be stickier. And so in the long run, at least that's what we keep telling ourselves. It's economically accretive rather in the long run. In the short run, it hurts a little.
Well, you were telling us an interesting story at lunch today, and I was wondering if you could share with everybody about the music industry.
Yep.
And how that has changed in terms of subscription versus, I'm old school, buying CDs.
Yep.
And how your company has helped the music industry adapt to that change.
Correct. I mean, I think that's a great example we could cite in terms of how technology has affected not just us as consumers, but also the companies that provide, the products and services we consume. So you mentioned the music industry. How many of you here have heard about the Napster days, right? When music piracy was the rage. I mean, 80% of the music that we listened to, or that the world listened to, was pirated. And boy, has that changed, Nobody pirates music anymore because it's so inexpensive to subscribe to whatever you want to listen to, for $4, $5, maximum $10 a month. You have the world's music at the tip of your palms, at the tip of your fingers. So what has happened to us as consumers is we've changed how we consume music. We pay for it on a subscription basis, and we pay for it as we go. What that has meant to the companies that provide the music is very different because now they don't make money from, you buying CDs at a store or at a record shop or whatever. When was the last time anybody went to a record shop? I don't know. Not anytime soon, right?
Record shops are.
So what that has meant is the companies that provide and record this music have to now manage their revenue from all the streaming. So imagine billions, in some cases trillions of transactions that have to be aggregated to determine what is it that needs to get paid to the companies that actually spend the time and the money and the effort to record the music and market it. And then how do they turn around and pay the artists? It's all based on what you and I stream every day. Every stream is accounted for in terms of how much money, for example, the Universal Musics and the Sony Musics, these are the companies that actually own the recorded music, get paid from the Spotifys and the YouTubes of the world, and then how they have to then turn around and pay the artist, because the one mantra in the music industry is you never shortchange the artist.
Explain to us how your company interfaces in that process.
So we help companies like Universal Music and Sony Music manage their commercial relationships with the Spotifys and the YouTubes and the Pandoras of the world. So when they send all the streaming data for their songs, for Universal songs, for example, back to Universal, we have to synthesize all that and figure out how much do each of these are called digital service providers. The term that's used is DSPs, so Spotify's and YouTube's. How much do they owe Universal? Our software helps Universal track that. And then we use that to also figure out how much does Universal owe the artists. Because how much they collect also determines what they owe the artists. So our software helps in that aspect as well, helps manage that aspect, which is inordinately, insanely complex.
Well, from that description, it sounds like the benefit is clearly to the artist, because with the pirating of the music, the artist wasn't getting paid, and that was the problem with pirating of music. Is there any harm?
I would say yes. First, let me talk about the benefit. I mean, for those of you that read the Wall Street Journal, almost every single month over the course of the last 6 to 9 months, you'll always see some article about how some artist has sold their catalogs for hundreds of millions of dollars. They would not have been able to do this in the past, just because they are now able to monetize it. So I think the fact that we are not pirating music and we are paying for it on an as-you-go basis is amazing for them as well as for us, right? I mean, this is an example of win-win on the technology front. I think the only harm I can think about there is, for example, the over-reliance of these systems on what the consumers are gonna tend to listen to is overhyped. So now that there's all this data available, some of the pundits at these companies suddenly say, oh, we have big data. We have trillions of streams, and we have demographic data. We know exactly what consumers want to listen to. And they go to their artists and say, well, this is the type of music you should focus on, and you should record, or you should compose and create, and so on. To me, that's taking it a little too far. That's the harm. Music is an emotional connection. I don't think it can be, put in a database of zeros and ones, and you're able to tell, the artist what they should do. It's an emotional connection. So that's where I think it would be. If the day the music companies tell the artists what type of music they should compose and create is when it's causing harm, in my opinion. Because the artists need to have, the composers need to have the emotional connection. And I don't think technology is there yet, or will ever be there to establish emotional connections.
So how, or should we, not say how, should we somehow impose some kind of regulation on technology that will levitate the benefit and suppress the harm? Like, how do we know in advance what to do?
That's really hard to do, to know in advance, just because there is so much proliferation of technology. It's kind of hard to do, and we don't want to stifle creativity, right, by regulating it and so on. I think the marketplace is a great clearinghouse for it. But to your point about how do we know whether something is causing more harm than good, I say there is nothing that replaces human judgment. Good human judgment should, and maybe it varies from individual to individual. I don't think regulation is the way to go. I think as a race we are getting smarter every day, I believe, and so we should use our judgment to decide whether something is harmful or not. It's not toxic in that it needs to be regulated, right? It's just how you want to use it.
Well, I'm going to ask you to look into a crystal ball.
A crystal ball.
A crystal ball. And think about where you're seeing the next big technological breakthroughs. What do you see on the horizon?
The next big technological breakthrough. Okay, what do I see on the horizon? The next big technological breakthrough that I'm looking for, really, from a selfish standpoint, is anti-fogging glasses. So I can wear my mask easier.
Okay.
But I think from a humor aside, I can speak about business-to-business technology because that's the world we live in, and frankly, there isn't actually a huge breakthrough or any massive shift there. I mean, outside of what's happening with cloud computing, it's that I believe that enterprise software is kind of boring to use, right? People use it because they have to use it, not because they want to use it. They use it because their jobs demand it and they want to get done. Whereas as personal users of software and so on, there are certain things that we love to use, right? I think the next big technology breakthrough should be how to make enterprise software in our world, again, in our domain, how to make it more enjoyable to use. It tends to be a little too cluttered and chaotic. Us included. We are at the forefront of it, right?
And this is our future that will create this technological breakthrough. Well, if I can shift the conversation to your relationship with Lehigh, you have been such an incredible supporter of what we're doing in the business school, what we're doing in the university, for which I thank you. Why did you choose the investment in executive education?
Yeah, I've always rather been a firm believer in, never to stop the learning process, being lifelong learning. It's a journey, not a destination. I'm sure you've, heard this, but I really, really do firmly believe in that. As part of that, I took a couple of exec ed classes or programs at one of the biggest purveyors of exec ed. And we know that it's a highly concentrated market, right? The top 3 or 4 control 80, maybe 90% of the market in exec ed. And I actually found it quite uninspiring. I did not enjoy it because it tends to be very instructive. It was a little too pedagogical. We figured it out, and thou shalt do this if thou wants to get ahead. And I just felt that was too instructive, and it was telling us, not teaching us how to learn. Mm-hmm. And I thought that exec ed could use maybe a more refreshing approach in terms of, hey, just provide us the tools and make us aware, and then let us figure out ways to apply it, and not be, very directive and instructive. And that was the genesis of, and you and I talked about this, and I said, what better place than my alma mater to try something exploratory?
Well, we are most appreciative of that, and we are working very hard to live up to your vision of what executive education should be in terms of interactive classes, of bringing people together to learn and also be educated.
Yep.
Yeah. Vistex has a foundation. If you could tell us a bit about that, especially I would be interested in learning more about the hospital in India.
Yep. Yeah, so Vistex Foundation is a philanthropic initiative for providing resources to what we consider are most in need, and it works primarily in the areas of health, basic health, education, and micro-lending, especially in some of the more challenging areas of the world. We, of course, want to provide help where help is needed most. And we've picked a few projects. We actually started with a remote location in Western Africa to create a maternity clinic. We've done eye clinics. We've done micro-lending in Central America. And our flagship project, which we launched roughly 3 years ago, was to actually build a full-service hospital in one of the most challenging regions in India. We enjoy giving back, and this is a mechanism to do so. More importantly, we also have an employee-led initiative. So while the Vistex Foundation takes on larger projects, we have an employee-led initiative where, through employee volunteerism and projects that they source and want to work on in the communities that we live and work, is what we call Vistex Endeavor. We're equally proud of that as well, because here our employees can participate themselves, and we have some great stories on that front as well.
And you do that worldwide? Or?
Worldwide. We operate in every major geography of the world, and there are Vistex resources, Vistex dispatch resources across the globe that participate and participate with enthusiasm. I mean, we are a private company. We are not required to do it. We do it because we want to do it.
Marvelous. I also heard a story about your employees during the pandemic and what you did with them. Maybe you can tell the
Yeah, that was a very interesting, I thought it was just, a moment where I felt that during the pandemic, all of the, the so-called, day wage laborers or folks that rely on daily or weekly wages were affected the most, right? Whether it's your hairdresser or, the local guard or everybody that gets paid on an hourly basis or the food service worker and so on, because people are not going into restaurants anymore and so on. So we asked our folks to go identify folks that they know and, that are the most affected in their communities, that are in these positions, right? Like, people were not going anywhere. So, there are cab drivers that were suddenly, struggling. And so we challenged our folks to go and find opportunities to, provide even the most basic amount of help, right? With no strings attached. Just pay a month's rent or buy groceries for a week or whatever, or pay for their doctor's visit if a family member was sick. And boy, our folks responded with a lot of gusto, and we were able to help a lot of people through that. So no formal program, just our folks going out and helping somebody that they know very well, right? That are in their immediate circle. So that was the program, and I thought it was very well received, and in fact, it worked so well that we actually repeated it the following year. We did it again in 2021.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful because it brings philanthropy down to the very, very local level.
Exactly, yeah.
To the neighborhood level.
Yep.
Well, that concludes our formal conversation. I invite the audience to come. We have mics set up. I would love for there to be long lines behind each of the mics, and I will take your questions. I'm going to scoot over here so I can see better. Don't be shy. Well, I'll start. Could you share some of the leadership lessons you've learned over the years?
Some of the leadership lessons?
Yes.
Two that come to mind. One, be authentic. I think at least, over the course of my career, I have seen quite a few cases and instances where, folks try to be pretentious because, they want us, because they're putting up what they think we want to see. And while that may work in the short term, I think in the mid to long term it doesn't. Be yourself and go with your gut, right? Don't try to be what others want you to be. The second one is have pride of ownership. And that one is very near and dear to my heart, is whether you are mopping a floor or checking out, behind a library desk or advising the largest companies in the world. If you put your imprint on something, you gotta have pride of ownership. Which means if somebody finds something wrong with it, it should really, really bother you.
That's great. I think we have someone go. You want the mic? Okay.
Hi, Sanjay.
Hi.
Andrew Ward here from the Management Department. Wanted to get back to this whole notion of regulation around technology, especially as we're talking about the sort of good and the bad of technology. And there's been a lot of movement over the last several years in terms of the EU and our Congress really sort of clamping down on big tech and trying to regulate big tech, and sort of a lot of the discussion around antitrust because of these large technology companies. So I wanted you to be able to comment on your view on the regulatory environment for technology, and particularly in as much as how that impacts the sort of larger competitive space, and as Western companies, US companies competing against Chinese companies and other companies around the world for technology leadership.
Yeah, great. So I think when we talk about technology and regulation, the vast majority of all the conversation and focus is on regulating technology that we consume as consumers, right? Around our data and our privacy as consumers, right? As individual consumers. And that's largely because the impression is that's more or less controlled by a handful of companies around the world. And I think that's what's causing all of this heightened focus and attention. While I don't believe I'm qualified enough to comment on where that should go, and maybe even different people that follow it have different opinions on that. When it comes to technology in what I call the business-to-business world, which is the world that I live in, that me and my team live in, there's very little talk of any regulation per se, because this is technology that's provided to companies to help them do business with other companies. Where do I think this whole technology regulation is going to go? I think to some extent, we have been so accustomed to using technology for free, like without paying for it, that we ought not to complain too much about it, because if you don't like your data to be used, don't use the tool, right? But I think to the extent that the companies use our data to cause us harm, right, that should be regulated. But I mean, the jury's out on that. I don't know if they're actually using it to cause harm or not, right? For example, to create monopolistic practices, for example, or go out and sell it for nefarious means and so on, right? That definitely should be regulated. But if we use technology, whether it's Google Maps or whatever else we use, right? And then everybody freaks out when they say Google is tracking me. Yeah, well, of course.
Thank you.
Hi, Jamie Flinchball, class of '94. I'm sure with enterprise software, you're playing around with big data and machine learning and things like that. I'd love to hear sort of two parts. One, what are you doing around machine learning and AI in the space you play in? But second, around the consequences side, there's already plenty of examples of machine learning that ends up reflecting on the social biases that have then negative consequences, and sort of requires, whether it's ethics or other practices, in with the technologist building that. So do you have any perspectives on how you incorporate that into your own practices?
Sure. So let me address the first part first. I mean, AI, machine learning is here to stay. I mean, data science, as it's broadly referred to, it's all pervasive, and it's gonna. I think it has embedded itself in what I call consumer software. I mean, we use it every day without even realizing it. In the business-to-business and the enterprise software world, it's slowly making its way into it. I think it still has a ways to go, because for two reasons, right? One is, I think in the business-to-business world, and again, this is strictly my opinion, with full disclaimer, that it's not all that it's hyped up to be. It definitely can provide you with better decision-making tools, but it cannot make decisions for you. So my biggest worry is, I want to make sure I do not use artificial intelligence to become a natural idiot. That's something I want to avoid. But it's finding its way to it. It could be argued that it's still early days, if you will, for business, for enterprise software. We are continuing to figure out ways and means to incorporate that. But to Georgette's point earlier, it can also cause harm. It doesn't always result in good. Let me give you an example. Zillow. Everybody has heard of Zillow, right? And everybody goes to Zillow, and they have this fabulous tool called Zestimate. So you go, and it tells you exactly what the value of your home is, right? And they take hundreds of factors. They're like a poster child or poster company for using AI, ML, data science, what do you want to call it? Hundreds of factors: neighborhood, vintage, materials used, all of it. And then they figured, hey, if I can calculate or predict the value of the home, maybe we should get into that business. So they got into the business of buying and selling homes. And they started buying homes, and a few months later realized that they were not able to sell them, because there is more to buying and selling a home than just ones and zeros on a database. There is this emotional connection. There is desirability. There are some things that somebody may notice that may be an instant turn off, right? You cannot capture all that in AI and ML, right? So, for hundreds of millions of dollars in losses, they get out of that business. And they said, oh, we put a Zestimate out there, it's just a guide, right? It's not a be-all, end-all. So I think we should be careful. Yeah, it's a great guide, right? It's a great starting point. But to just go all in and blindly rely on it, I don't think is conducive.
Is there someone at this?
Oh, yes, sorry about that. Sanjay Siva from marketing department here at Lehigh. You rightfully talked more about B2B relationships, but the concept of AI and technology are more easily visible, particularly the harmful effects at the individual customer level. So I am afraid of my data being stolen. Businesses are not afraid of their data being stolen, for example. Yeah. So in your relationship, in your company, when you are dealing with the B2B, how do the idea of downstream consequences for the customer, which your companies all do, your clients all do, how do those downstream consequences factor into your strategies?
Yeah, that's a good question. The data in the B2B world is highly secure, right? I mean, that's almost a precondition of working in the B2B world. Whether you provide those capabilities, in an on-prem or data center, their own data center environment, or in the cloud. One of the first and foremost requirements is that the data has to be secure, because it only has to be available to the people, and even it's only to certain people in that. I don't think there are any direct implications of any security downstream, in the sense, what implications they have for their data with their consumers and so on, right? And like I said, maybe I'm also not qualified enough to comment on that, because we live in the business to business world. But there, I mean, security is almost a given, right? That it's table stakes. It's a conversation that, very, very early on, if you don't get a check on it, the conversation doesn't even progress.
So Sanjay, very interesting talk, very interesting remarks. And I'm curious now to take some of the things that you've been talking about and try to think how to apply it as advice to current students who are interested in being successful in this world that you've described today and into the future. What do you see, given your experience at Vistex and interviewing students, sort of talking to people, interviewing people for jobs, what do you see as some of the most important skills that they need? Is it technology skills, or is it soft skills, or both, about making decisions about hiring, offering jobs, positions to people who you think are going to be the greatest contributors at your company, given its role at the intersection between business and technology?
Yeah. I think the opportunity for students, especially those recently or soon to graduate from undergrad, and even for that matter graduate programs, is the intersection of business and technology. And while that may sound a bit cliched, technology, I think, is not going to be a separate discipline anymore. It's going to be so enmeshed in everything. And the ability to apply technology and its advantages to business functions is what I believe is going to be a huge opportunity, right? And accounting, right? You have to know how your debits and credits work and so on. But how do you apply technology to make it better, more transparent? Calculate ratios, for example. Sales and marketing. How do you apply technology to market better, to sell better, etc. Supply chain. As we know, building adaptive supply chains is a huge opportunity. And I don't think you can build adaptive supply chains without the appropriate application of technology. So one is to learn how to apply technology to various business functions, but also know its limitations. Sometimes I'd say if you don't know the advantages, it's okay, but know its limitations. And second is to be a little more cross-functional. Is just because you're pursuing accounting or if you're pursuing sales and marketing, that doesn't mean you should not have exposure to the other business functions, because business functions are blending, right? They're getting so blended now, right? That a sales and marketing person, especially if you work for Universal Music, has to know accounting quite well, because there are huge implications, and vice versa, right? That while you focus on something, make sure you don't do it at the expense of cross-functional skills, especially in the business world. I can speak about the business world because that's the world I live in.
Well, I think that is a perfect note on which to end.
I'm sorry, he had a question. And
I'm sorry, sir. Are you a member of the Lehigh community?
This is where we get to preempt you.
But if I could please ask that you use the mic because we're being live streamed. Yeah, sorry.
Or just have him come up here.
Or come up here. You're welcome to use
So I think we
this
should
mic.
have a round of applause for President Hellblade for making time to be a part of this. We are honored.
Sanjay, I'll give you so thank you for taking my question, Sanjay. I'll speak to Dean Phillips afterwards. I'll give you an easy and appropriate question to end on. It's very easy and tempting for students or for any of us really to look at a successful company, a successful individual, a successful leader, and say that the path from having an initial idea to success was linear or monotonic. But often, or in fact rarely, that's the case. And so is there an example of a pivot that you had to make early on in the development of Vistex, and how was it your education at Lehigh that prepared you to make that shift and be successful?
Yeah. I would say the one thing, having weathered what I would call 3 economic crises, right? The dot-com bust, the Great Recession, and then COVID. I can say that the one thing that probably has worked for us and for Vistex is essentially resilience and not straying from the cause, right? There was a lot of underlying belief in what we do and in our mission, And we were very fortunate to have enough like-minded people that helped us weather through this. So, like sometimes pivoting is not always the answer. In our case, we didn't pivot, and we stayed true to our cause, and we were able to weather 3 crises. To answer your second question, how did Lehigh shape my career and my future? I have to say that I came into Lehigh straight out of an undergraduate program, so I didn't come with any baggage per se, right? So I think what Lehigh did for me was to open up create a window for me on the immense opportunity that was available in the world of business, especially in this great country of ours, and gave me a good grounding in all the business functions and disciplines. I didn't come here with any preset criteria. I just wanted to go to the same college as Lehigh Iacocca. That was my motivation, and I was thrilled that I was accepted. And so I was, fairly impressionable, if you will. But all the professors and everybody, and even the cohort that we had, right? I was a part of what is called the Flex MBA program now. The folks had multiple years of experience, so I was really kind of fortunate to have people that had years of experience sitting beside me with basically no experience. So again, grounding in the business disciplines and showcasing the window, right? The window to the American dream, as we say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to thank all of you for attending the 2022 Donald Gruhn 49 Distinguished Finance Speaker Series. A special thanks to Don and Judy Gruhn, whose continuous support of this speaker series makes it possible to bring alums such as Sanjay back to share their wisdom with you. And I hope that you have learned from him what is possible, even for a kid 21 years old from Mumbai who landed here because of Lehigh Iacocca. It is truly an amazing story. Thank you for coming back, Sanjay. We really appreciate all of your words and your wisdom. And with that, have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.